Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to join our discussion, Nothing About Us Without Us, the role of small countries in the United Nations. Tonight, we have distinguished guests among us. His Excellency, Mr. Denis Francis, President of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Her Excellency Baiba Braže, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Latvia.
My Excellency, let's skip the Excellencies part.
His Excellency Margus Tsahkna, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia. And Mr. Kristofers Kārlis Krūmiņš, United Nations Youth Delegate of Latvia. My name is Kārlis Vērdiņš. I am a senior researcher at the Institute of Literature, Folklore and Art at the University of Latvia. For the last few years, one of my objects of interest has been the concept of small literature, attributed to many literary cultures regarded as peripheral or minor. Latvian literature is one such literary culture, so I and some of my colleagues are interested in power dynamics in the global literary market. My interest led me to the field of international relations, small state studies. This field pays attention to the existence of states with relatively small populations, small territories, or small GDPs. In the past, the situation of many small states was described as endangered because of the expansionist politics of the big states. Latvia also is an example of such a position and could not protect its independence against the expansionism of the USSR. The situation has changed nowadays when joining different international unions, alliances, and organizations is seen as a crucial factor for small states to protect their interests and their sovereignty. One such organization is the United Nations, which was established just after the Second World War in 1945 and now unites 193 member states, almost all of the world's sovereign states. Latvia and Estonia have been United Nations members since 1991, while Trinidad and Tobago joined the organization already in 1962, right? One of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations is the United Nations Security Council, which consists of 15 countries. It has 5 permanent members, the US, France, Russia, China, and the UK, with veto power. The other 10 countries are members elected by the secret ballot of the United Nations General Assembly for a 2-year term. Lithuania was a member of the UNSC from 2014-15, while Estonia from 2020-21. Latvia has set the target to become one of the member states in the period of 2026-27 and will participate in the 2025 elections. And besides our discussion, at the end, the foreign ministers of Latvia and Estonia will present the annual Language Award, honoring achievements in popularizing the Latvian language in Estonia and the Estonian language in Latvia. And then finally, the joke session. But now it is time to give the floor to our distinguished guests. Mrs. Baiba Braža is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Latvia. She joined the Foreign Service in 1993 and has served as Ambassador of the Republic of Latvia to the United Kingdom and the Kingdom of the Netherlands. From 2020 to 2023, she held the post of Assistant Secretary General of NATO for Public Diplomacy. She devised and oversaw strategic communications activities across all NATO civilian and military bodies and commands. Please.
Thank you so much. And tonight's theme is actually, I think, very relevant for Estonia, Latvia, Trinidad, Tobago, but also for about 90% of the world's countries, which is nothing about us without us and the role of small states in the UN, but globally. And for Latvia, that answer has been very clear. From the moment we were established, when we had the first temporary government, provisional government of the Republic of Latvia in 1917, and President Davis had the honor with me to look at the papers of Mr. Meirovits, how he was lobbying for Latvia in London. It was very clear. It was the international recognition of our sovereignty. So it was not only foundation of the Republic of Latvia, of having our own state, our own will, but the international recognition of the Republic of Latvia. So first in 1921 by the Allied powers and by the worldwide international community, member of League of Nations. Then of course the occupation, as you rightly said, followed. But then when the United Nations were established, we were still an occupied country, so we didn't have a chance to participate in the founding of the United Nations. So when we restored the independence through sheer will, knowledge, and a sort of natural ability to use that moment in the end of 80s and beginning of 90s, the first things that we did was to apply for the membership in the United Nations. So the day when the flags went up in September of 91 at the UN by the Baltic states and the 2 Koreas that were also not members of the United Nations before, it was one of the proudest moments in my life. It meant that full sovereignty, full ability of our states had been restored. And then the work started, because at that time, and as we discussed yesterday with Mr. President, United Nations General Assembly is the world's parliament. It's the parliament, the member states' representations where all member states sit. So 193 global powers are there. So how to work in that community? And it was very clear for us that the matters of sovereignty, the withdrawal of Russian troops from Latvia, the consolidation of our sovereignty through active involvement in the work of the United Nations was a choice that we did. So now the next step for us, after more than 30 years in the United Nations as a member, will be the trying for the election to the UN Security Council. And that is both further consolidation of our work, but also contribution to the world giving our knowledge, giving our ability to try to contribute to all three pillars of the UN's work, which is security and peace, which is the human rights, and sustainable development, meaning helping and assisting countries who are not as well off as we are. And there, for small states, I think it's a unique opportunity to consolidate our sovereignty, to work with others, and to that way also bring a better deal for the world around us. So that is what we are doing, and where we think that both the experience that the Trinidad Tobago throughout the years has had, that you as Mr. President, the way you lead the General Assembly so ably and in a very unifying way, through your experience from a small state perspective, and what Estonia did in the UN Security Council is all very relevant for Latvia. So that's why we are here.
As the statement of Latvian diplomacy says, Latvia is aware that it is now its responsibility and duty to care for the efficiency, modernization, and revitalization of the UN system. And I wonder how such an ambitious plan can be executed by a small country.
Together with other countries is the answer. You don't work alone. You build coalitions in the UN. There are countries from all regional groups in the UN who have communal interests, whether it's on peacekeeping matters, whether it's on matters of development, whether it's on matters of preventing sexual violence in conflicts, as we had seen Russia committed in Ukraine, or other issues. There's building of coalitions, and that is a way you work in the UN to advance joint interests. That is how we see that.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor for Mr. Denis Francis, the President of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly. He has had a career spanning approximately 40 years in the diplomatic service of Trinidad and Tobago. He has the distinction of being his country's longest-serving ambassador, and he has served as a senior advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs on all multilateral level matters, including climate change and the negotiations on a 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Please, Mr. Francis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to join you today in this beautiful city of Riga, and I express my gratitude to the organizers of this important annual event for their kind invitation. I congratulate the LAMPA Festival on 10 years of success in cultivating dialogue, diplomacy, and friendship, offering a space to find breakthroughs on the critical issues of our troubled times. It is a fitting anniversary to mark on these hallowed grounds of Cēsīs, where in June 1919, a decisive battle of Latvian and Estonian independence was won, a joint victory showcasing the remarkable power of small states' solidarity in action. It is a power that I know all too well as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, a small island nation in the Caribbean, well versed in the value of multilateralism and international cooperation and strong people-to-people connections. As demonstrated time and again, be it in the General Assembly, the Security Council, or elsewhere in our intergovernmental processes, small states are the fiercest defenders of multilateralism and the UN Charter, its guiding constitution. They are among the staunchest protectors and expanders of international law. In turn, small states are also protected by multilateral arrangements, which cushions them from inherent vulnerabilities and help build resilience against external threats and undue influence by the powerful that often hamper their ability to act as independent and sovereign states. And while it may be easy to criticize the shortcomings of multilateralism, I shudder to consider how our world would fare without its many benefits. Might would rule over right, and the few would rule over the many. I need not remind this audience about the dangers of such scenarios. Indeed, multilateralism enhances sovereignty rather than diminishes it. Through multilateralism, member states build coalitions to pursue common priorities rather than compete over them. It is no wonder then that when states become independent, as Latvia and Estonia did after 50 years of Soviet occupation, one of their first acts is to join the United Nations, an extraordinary moment of global solidarity. Because at the United Nations, each member state is equal in rights and responsibilities. With equal voice and vote in the United Nations General Assembly, the so-called Parliament of the World, given its universal representation of all sovereign nations, big and small. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while it is true that most UN member states are small in size, they never lack in ambition or determination to deliver on tangible results. Take, for example, Liechtenstein's effort to increase accountability of the Security Council in discharging its primary responsibility in matters of peace and security. An effort that gained wide support and led to the General Assembly's consensus adoption of the so-called veto initiative in 2022. Consider as well Vanuatu's securing the backing of more than 130 member states to spearhead the General Assembly's request for an International Court of Justice advisory opinion on state obligations to mitigate the effects of carbon emissions. Following my appointment of your permanent representative in New York, our dear Sanita, together with her Guinean counterpart, Latvia itself has shown exemplary leadership in this 78th session of the General Assembly as co-facilitator of the strengthening of the Economic and Social Council and the review of the high-level political forum on sustainable development, championing the drive for systemic efficiency and faster action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Latvia has also been at the forefront of the fight against misinformation and disinformation, having initiated the General Assembly's first ever resolution on the issue. Estonia's leadership, particularly on issues of digital governance and cybersecurity, has been equally vital to charting a more secure and peaceful future. During its recent membership of the Security Council, Estonia convened the very first official meeting on security, emphasizing that member states must adhere to international law and norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. Demonstrating the importance of this issue, the Republic of Korea just last month built on this initiative by also holding a thematic debate on cybersecurity during its presidency of the Council, highlighting the continued need for vigilance against cyber threats. In each of these cases, and many others, small states are demonstrating that there is nothing about us without us at the United Nations, a spirit that is the lifeblood of the General Assembly as the United Nations' most representative inclusive policy-making body. Across the Assembly's negotiating tracks, particularly for the Summit of the Future, member states, including small states, are deeply engaged in the issues, individually and in groupings, such as the G77 and China, small island developing states, or the European Union. As President of the General Assembly, I also have supported the active participation of not only small states, but also civil society, young people, indigenous peoples, and others in the Assembly's work through inclusive hearings and direct engagement. The challenges before us demand no less. The people of Latvia and Estonia have not been blind to the death and destruction caused by the Russian Federation's unlawful aggression against Ukraine, where I just visited and learned firsthand the ongoing horror visited upon the Ukrainian people. Millions have been displaced. Schools, hospitals, and vital public infrastructure have been repeatedly attacked in reckless abandon of international law. And ample evidence exists that children have been forcibly and unlawfully transferred or deported. During my visit to Bucha earlier this week, I saw the devastation and the atrocious acts committed there with my own eyes. I was also moved by the glaring anguish in the eyes and voices of the students I interacted with at Mariupol State University, who are not only the traumatized victims of Russian aggression, but were forcefully relocated to pursue their education in a temporary facility in Kiev. I reiterate my condemnation of Russia's aggression in the strongest terms, a message made clear through six, I repeat, 6 General Assembly resolutions adopted during the 11th Emergency Special Session, as well as those adopted year after year on the human rights situation in the temporary occupied territories of Ukraine. All these resolutions carry the moral weight of the vast majority of the international community and thus represent the conscience of humanity. In plain terms, Russia's aggression is a clear violation of the United Nations Charter. And as I also did during my visit to Ukraine, I reiterate here in Riga the demand of the General Assembly for the immediate, complete, and unconditional withdrawal of Russian military forces from Ukraine's internationally recognized borders. And I call on all states, including small states like Latvia and Estonia, as bridge builders and peacemakers by nature, to continue doing their utmost to help bring about a just, comprehensive, and sustainable peace in Ukraine, in line with the UN Charter and relevant UN resolutions. The crisis in Ukraine is regrettable, but it is one among many on the global agenda. As we speak in the Gaza Strip, starvation is setting in and has become the order of the day for innocent civilians, unjustly stealing the youngest from our global community, the latest ghastly phase of humanitarian catastrophe. Over 37,000 Palestinians have been mercilessly killed, and nearly 80% of the population displaced since the October 7th, 2023 incident. All while violent conflict ensnares countries across the globe, such as Sudan, Yemen, and Myanmar, and other parts of the world. In my own Caribbean region, we must do all that we can to prevent Haiti from descending any further into chaos and anarchy at the hands of marauding assortment of gangs. The recent installation of the Transitional Council government and the deployment of multinational security support mission led by Kenya, with bilateral support from especially the United States, has rekindled hope that we can open a new chapter in Haiti. Let me end by reaffirming that, amid the turmoil, the United Nations mission is more necessary now than ever. The challenges we face are greater and are interconnected, but they are not, I repeat, they are not insurmountable. Only by working together with active involvement of small states can we hope to restore peace and stability in Ukraine and elsewhere, and thus fulfill our collective ambition for a more just, more safe, more equitable tomorrow. Over 30 years ago, the people of this region proved to the world that holding hands does indeed change the arc of history. The Baltic Way, from Tallinn through Riga to Vilnius, left us awestruck and deeply inspired by the outpouring of solidarity among peoples and commitment to universal ideals of liberty and freedom. It is time for us, as the United Nations and the international community at large, to follow this lead, to reinvigorate solidarity among member states, and to reignite trust across the Isles. I count on the support of Latvia and Estonia and all other member states, including small states, on this very important journey. Thank you, and Paldies? Paldies.
Thank you for your insights and for your support to our common goals, and you will have an opportunity to ask some questions at the end of this discussion. And, ja jūs galīgi nesaprotat, ko šeit runā, tad jums ir iespēja tikt pie austiņām ar tulkojumu latviešu valodā, bet droši vien šeit ir palikuši tikai tie, kuri saprot, vai ne? Labi. And our next distinguished guest, Mr. Margus Tsahkna, has been a member of Parliament of Estonia, Riigikogu, and has served as the Minister of Social Protection and the Minister of Defense. Since 2023, he is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Estonia. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President, for your very clear positions about the Russian aggression. And it is really something big that United Nations General Assembly has adopted already, you said, like 5 resolutions very clearly condemned the Russian behavior. And be honest, this is something rare because it's harder and harder to find this kind of consensus about the misbehavior of different nations. You'll see as well how much actually the resolution about Palestine or the Gaza actually dividing different part of the world, and even Europe is divided about these questions. And I'm just starting from this this understanding that my good colleague Baiba explained as well, that why it is so important for us as a small nations in the neighboring of Russia to belong to United Nations family as full members. So I don't take like this that there are like the big nations and there are small nations, because under the United Nations charters there are people, there are nations, and there is no division of the big nations and small nations, but we all belong there. And United Nations Charter is the constitution for our world order right now. And be honest, it has been agreed after the Second World War after the atrocities, what we saw, and how many millions and millions of people we lost, and then somehow the human beings agreed upon some kind of rules. We all agreed, and now these rules are under the heavy violation by Russia, but not only by Russia. And my question is larger: what kind of order we have in the future if the United Nations Charter is not guaranteed, or if it's not executed by the Security Council, which is actually organized and which is the main purpose is to keep the peace and security in the world. If the permanent member of the Security Council is actually violating all the basic rules, all the international law, the humanitarian law, committing the genocide, defaulting children, and the permanent member of Security Council is doing that against the other member of the United Nations, and also using the veto to justify or to block whatever actions we all want to take. So this is much more wider question. And of course, as a representatives of the smaller nations, we are worried about that. The first president of Estonia after we regained our independence in 1991, Lennart Meri, said that the nuclear weapon for small nations is international law. So for us, these rules, what we have agreed upon the United Nations Charter, this world based on this international law is for us existential question. It is existential question, not only for us, but I think for many other nations as well. But also I think that there is no difference if you are the United States or you are Latvia or Estonia, because if this rule-based world will collapse, we suffer all. We all suffer. And that's the reason why we need to work heavily to find the way out. I know that you are going to talk maybe about the reforms in the United Nations or the Security Council, or maybe not. But I was at your age or even younger, more than 20 years ago, when I studied in 1999 at the University of Toronto, very, very deeply the United Nations reforms, what we needed to do. And we didn't do nothing because it is impossible without the working Security Council. But what can we do is actually restore the justice based on United Nations Charter and using the General Assembly. Estonia is taking responsibilities together with Argentina about the President Zelensky 10 points peace plan. And the point 5 is that we are chairing or leading or guiding together with Argentina. And it is about territorial integrity and the restoration of United Nations Charter. So this is important, but it is very, very, very difficult task. But I'm just giving you one example. What can we do is that after the Second World War, we had a special tribunal in Nuremberg. And the aggression crimes were put under the trial. Aggression crimes are the leadership crimes. But now, in the 21st century, we have immunity about leadership crimes of aggression. So the only organization or institution which can break this and form and give actually the Secretary General of the United Nations this mandate to form this tribunal is the General Assembly. And I'm sure that, I don't know what will be the results, you President know better, maybe not so good right now. But just a good example, maybe we have an opportunity to break this kind of blocking situation if we using the voice of a General Assembly more and not finding the corner to hide. The corner, I mean, as well, the Secretary, well, the Security Council in the meaning. In some cases, if we see and look into United Nations Charter, General Assembly as the bigger right to decide than what we have used right now. But this is just for introduction. I want to say that we had a great experience, and we are very grateful for your support as well when Estonia was a member of Security Council, and it is a brave decision to run for that. And you have all our support, and we share all our experience, what we got as a small nation. It was a hard task to follow. But there are two parts. Please enjoy the campaign, because during this campaign you're going to meet, you're going to establish relations with the countries we never do normally, because we are small countries here in the Nordic countries. And these investments are really useful forever, because we are having the same understanding with many, many, many countries globally. We are never having this kind of touch, and this is investment for the next, I don't know, decades. And the second, and I'm sure you will get that position, and you will stand for this kind of principles which are existential for us. So good luck. You have us backing you up, then we can do everything. So thank you.
Maybe you have some comments on that.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your words of support and encouragement. Trinidad and Tobago is a small country. We are very conscious of the fact that we are small, but we do not, we have never regarded our size as a hindrance in foreign policy making. Because so much of the debate has to do with the power of principle and ideas, and no country has a monopoly on either of those. To our advantage, we've benefited from almost 400 years of British colonialism, which left us with a very strong English grammar school system. And that has paid dividends to us. It's not a surprise, therefore, that Trinidad and Tobago's engagement with the UN has shown an extraordinary trajectory in matters related to international law. The Arms Trade Treaty, which came into existence about 10 years ago, was largely an initiative pursued by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The International Criminal Court, which was established in 1980 through the Statute of Rome, was to a significant degree grandfathered by a former president of Trinidad and Tobago, Arthur Napoleon Robinson, whom I had the good fortune to have met and spoken with. And he tells the story that when the International Criminal Court was first proposed in the 1960s, there was a heavy pushback. Many countries were not willing to discuss the establishment of such a court. But now here it is, the court exists and is carrying out its mandate. God forbid there should not be such a court. Can you imagine what the situation would be? So we have a very strong mooring on matters of law. And it has to do with precisely the point you made, Minister. Our arsenal, the arsenal of our defense, is the law. It is the law. So we don't prioritize guns and ammunition, but we seek, and this is typical of most small states in the UN, seeking the protection of the law. And that is why, one of the reasons why, it is so absolutely important that member states honor their commitment, honor their responsibilities under the Charter. Every day, that the rules are upheld and honored, every member of the United Nations benefits from that. The rub comes when a country decides not to follow the rules. That's when the problem arises. But the system is bent on having the rules followed because that gives predictability. Countries know what to expect. And so I think we need to reinvest in peace and security, in peace, and reaffirm and defend, stand up and defend those rules. Because those rules, they are the Magna Carta of the system. There would be no system without those rules. They are our rules. We created them. And so it is our obligation to defend them.
Thank you very much for this. And I would like to give floor to our fourth participant, Mr. Kristofers Kārlis Krūmiņš, is UN Youth Delegate of Latvia. His duties include working at the permanent mission of Latvia to the United Nations and representing the Latvian youth in several UN forums. He has finished his exchange year at the Columbia University in the US, where he focused on area studies at the Harriman Institute. His other work is coaching the Latvian National High School debate team for the World Schools Debating Championships. Please.
Hi, thank you. When coming here, I was actually thinking about what else could I say than the people here on the panel with me, who some of which have already worked in positions to fight for the interests of whole nations, of small states, but still. And I came up with two questions that I want to briefly answer here. The first one is, how is youth activism very much similar to small states in the United Nations and elsewhere? And I think there are a lot of similarities. I can name three. The first one, the nothing about us without us. I think small states have the same sort of, I don't know, the spirit of having to at times be liked by the grown-ups or the bigger states, but at the same time they need to get their interests met. In forums like the United Nations, I think that is the best platform to do so, because a lot of the times questions such as climate change, such as security, are not the concerns of every single state who might be far away from given situations, but small states have the platform to achieve those ends and be heard, and sometimes be angry publicly if they're not listened to, but the United Nations gives them the platform to be heard. The second similarity that I see is youth is usually not seen as a big constituency, at least not politically, although the demographic shift is well underway in the world. The fact is that there are matters that need the specific expertise, either of small states or the youth, in a similar fashion, where you cannot make decisions about education or, let's say, even security without involving the youth. And the third one, and especially in the case of Latvia, I'm sure Estonia as well, we are ardent believers in multilateralism. The youth is the constituency that fights most for international order, for the values enshrined in the UN Charter, and all of those things that the UN stands for. And the same way I think small states do, because they realize the importance of having a level playing field and the international rules-based order. And very quickly, the second question I wanted to touch upon and kind of answer was something that comes up very frequently when we go to regional visits to schools with the UN Youth Latvia delegation, with a lot of advisors and other volunteers that come with me, is, you know, LAMPA's motto this year is "We believe in conversation." And sometimes when I talk to young people, they sometimes don't feel in the power of conversation anymore, or at least don't know that much about the UN to do so. I have 2 points here, again, of sort of encouragement. The first one is tied to the power of small states in the United Nations. And as all of the panelists already mentioned, we are just more numerous. If we all stick together, we can outvote many of the other traditionally bigger states or players in the realist world of international politics. And I think that's beautiful. I think that the fact that I could intern in New York and see Latvia as being one of the co-facilitators of one of the UN meetings, and have our ambassador Sandra, who's sitting in the audience, whom I will call out again, be there and guide the process is incredibly rewarding. And to be fair, if someone is doubting the influence of small states in the United Nations, then if we get elected to the Security Council, I would want to see no one else but, I don't know, Sanita looking in the eyes of the Russian ambassador and asking him, why is he ignoring the rules-based order that is enshrined in the UN Charter? And I think that is the power of small states. It's charismatic people who can go and elevate the voice of their country on such a big platform. And the second and my last point here, answering that question, especially to the young people in the audience, I do feel like youth diplomacy also matters, and also from small states, right? I've been to the ECOSOC Youth Forum, I've been to other places, I've been very fortunate to be chosen, and in those forums, you do get to talk to other young people who are going to be the future leaders, and we're not the same. We also come from different countries, we have different backgrounds, and even in those settings, you have to be very consistent and very focused on what your country stands for, or what the young people in your country stand for. So in that sense, youth diplomacy also matters. And I think in the UN system, there are positive steps in that direction already in the past years, the establishment of the UN Youth Office. But of course, there's much more to be done. And I think that, we can learn from the experience of small states in youth activism as well, and vice versa. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And now you have heard all 4 speakers, and I was told that there are some things called blue boxes. You can see one over there. So, yeah, you can ask questions both in English or in Latvian, and we will translate them if needed. So please, if you have questions, it's time for you to raise your hand, as Juris has done, and please could you come down and to pick up the question.
Hello, my name is Juris Kaja. I am a journalist. Can you hear me? Yeah, I am a journalist. My name is Juris Kaja. I am a freelancer working in the Baltic region for the global Spanish news agency EFI. And my question is to Foreign Minister Braja and to Foreign Minister of Estonia. Do you feel that because of what the Baltic states were saying for a long time about Russia, and then the events in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine, that you have now gained a lot more credibility in the world for what you say about Russia, and that you are able to influence the attitude of the rest of the European Union and NATO in formulating policy toward Russia and in supporting Ukraine?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm starting from here. I think you're right that we're having a more the stronger position to talk exactly about that, what we have been talking already like 30 years. Because both of us, we haven't changed our policy and our values. But unfortunately, we were right. Unfortunately, we were right when we started to talk about that Russia is an aggressive country. And I'm not talking about our past. I'm not talking about the occupation of Soviet Union, that we lost 1/5 of our population and all these atrocities and deportations and everything. What our nations actually experienced. Because when we regain our independence, I think that we all believed that it may be the end of history times, then maybe we can live finally in peace together with Russia and all the other nations as well. But I think that it took like a couple of years when we understood that actually nothing will change. And we started to not advocate against Russia, but for us, for freedom, for these values. And I think that our both nations and also all the other nations who has been suffered under the Soviet occupation, we still remember what is the price of freedom. What is the price of freedom? And we understand as well, not now, but we have understood it already years, that we need to fight, we need to stand for our freedom. And these principles and this democracy and this freedom is not granted. This is something we had always very clear positions. But I think that I was called, and but definitely you as well, and many other our politicians and diplomats during the last more than 20 years, like crazy Russophobic Baltic politicians. And even I remember that. But unfortunately, we were right. But I'm not happy about that. But now, we don't have to be proud about that. But this is now our duty to speak out, to find more and more allies to fight for the same values. And I think as well that if we look around in Europe, then like 3 years ago, we were talking mainly about the European Union, about the farmers' benefits. But now we are deciding already to give the military support to a third country, because we understand as well all together, not all maybe. One guy just went today to Moscow to visit Putin. But most of European countries understand as well that we need to fight and stand for the freedom, and many other countries as well. And finalizing this answer is that actually we were not just smart and not experienced, but we just read what Putin said publicly. And I was always worried about why different analysts and different think tankers and very smart people, they always were thinking during the last, I don't know, 15 years, what is actually behind the Putin's words? What is the secret plan of Putin? What is there? But that, actually, be honest, you can find it already, I don't know, on web pages everywhere, more than 10 years about the Putin's plan. It was a restoration of Soviet Union empire, using force if it's needed. The plan was there, but nobody believed that it can be committed and executed. And now we see this is on, and it won't stop. So that is something we were right, and it is our obligation. We need to stand for that. And yes, I totally agree with you. Our weight is bigger than actually it was maybe like 10 years ago. Thank you.
I fully agree with Margus, and also I would like to add that I think our credibility is there not just because of Russia or being right about Russia, but because also, as Margus said, we act on the basis of values, principles, and rules, that there is something we want to achieve. We want to be a positive force, not only in Europe, but also in the world, and that relates to certain interests, whether it's respect for our cultural values, whether it's respect for cultural heritage, whether it's respect for certain types of behaviors on the global stage. And there will be countries who feel and think exactly the same way. So that is the way we have conducted our foreign policy. And that also how we behave in the EU. We build coalitions to try to achieve something positive. Obviously, on Russia, unfortunately, we have much more history and much more knowledge than we ever had wanted. And it's our obligation to make sure that other countries know, understand, and it's our responsibility to explain it in such a way, to argue in favor of freedom, to argue in favor of certain principles, understanding, to all the countries, so that it would be known and the others would align with us.
Thank you very much. And do we have another question, please, there?
Thank you, dear ministers, for your inputs. I have a brief question for President Francis and Christophers on the role of generation cooperation. My name is Annette. I study international security at Sciences Po, and closely following the happenings of the UN Security Council, we see Russia and China as the ones that see security very narrowly. But we, the young generation, are fighting to include environment and gender and all these perspectives that intersect with security on the agenda. So I would like to know what President Francis and Christophers feel, how healthy is the cooperation between the generations within the United Nations, especially taking into account different challenges such as unpaid internships for youth to be included and for us to broaden this perspective on security. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Matters of peace and security lie at the very center of the work of the United Nations. And that is not likely to change anytime soon. Your specific focus has to do with the intergenerational linkages between the more traditionally defined approaches to peace and security and the more modern approach linking peace and security to the environment, to climate change, and issues of that nature. Very interesting, the discourse, because we have had in recent years challenges in getting the Security Council of the United Nations to engage in a discussion, a proper discussion of climate change as a matter of national security, as a matter of security. There was no appetite for that discussion. However, things are changing because there was a discussion in the Security Council during the presidency of Malta, I think it was. And I can anticipate that going forward, such discussions will come up again. You're quite right. National security issues, traditional security issues, as important as they are, need to take account of the new realities that impose certain requirements on society. You have, in the context of climate change, climate refugees. People who have had to relocate their homes. You have a situation in the Pacific, where countries are entering into arrangements with third parties to relocate their populations. These are practical realities that do constitute national security interests. And therefore, the traditional narrow lens of dealing with peace and security will not suffice. We need a more pragmatic, a more realistic, a more informed approach to dealing with these issues, because if we are to get a credible outcome, if we are to create formulas that adequately address and respond to those challenges, then we have got to take all of these considerations on board. It simply cannot be the traditional parameters of peace and security. So thank you for the question. My advice to you would be to stay tuned, because I suspect that there will be a whole lot more of that discussion taking place going forward.
I will be very brief and quick. because I understand we have to move on. But there were two questions actually that Aneta, I think, asked there. The first one about the understanding of security. We at the UN Youth Latvia delegation have always put emphasis on various different SDGs and how they are linked. And definitely, I think at the UN there's already the concept of human security promoted by Japan, who is very active on this question. And obviously, I think you don't have to search far. For example, if you look at Ukraine, you look at, I don't know, it being now the most mined country and how that is going to affect the environmental security in the future of that country. If you look at gender-based violence and conflicts, that is definitely something that we did not put emphasis on before, because we had a very rigid understanding of what conflict even means, that has permanent consequences in the long term for the security of those states. So, I mean, and Ukraine is not the example, the only example. If you look at what's going on in Gaza, it's a similar catastrophe in many other domains beyond security. It's you know, gender violence, the effect that it has on the environment. So those are just some examples. The second question was about the generational dialogue. It's nice that it is in the Pact for the Future. So we are heading, I think, in the right direction. But here's another similarity between the youth and small states. Not every small state has a ability to be represented everywhere at the same time. It is very demanding, and currently there are discussions in the UN how to streamline that process better, to represent small states better, right? Because there's a limited number of diplomats, it's hard to cover all meetings and be present compared to big states like the Permanent Five of the UN. So the youth is suffering sometimes from the same, or sometimes not being able to be in that room. I'm happy that in Latvia it's going in the right direction. There's a lot of work to be done globally, because the UN Youth Delegate Program is actually something exclusive that Latvia has, and not every state in the world has it. So I guess that's my response.
Thank you very much. And
I will just do an unplanned interruption. And can I just thank our foreign ministries team, who are mostly young people working on the United Nations. So the youth diplomats and the young diplomats are not only the ones that we get in through the outside work, but actually our own team is youth and young people. So it's really great for me.
thank you very much for your answers. We have to cut short our Q&A session because we have more exciting things coming your way. So, the time has come for the foreign ministers of Latvia and Estonia to present the annual Language Award, honoring excellence, achievements, and individual contribution, popularizing the Latvian language in Estonia and the Estonian language in Latvia. This award is presented for the 15th time today. So first I give the floor to Mrs. Baiba Braža.
And I will speak in Latvian, so maybe, Kārlis, you can sit next to Mr. President to translate a little bit. It's not going to be too long. Man ir labvakar, man ir patiesas prieks sveikt jūs Latvijas un Igaunijas ārlietu ministriju valodu balvas pasniegšanas ceremonijā. Šis ir īpašs gads, mēs atzīmējam to jau 15. reizi, un tā ir ļoti skaista un arī nozīmīga un arī emocionāla tradīcija mūsu gan ministriju, gan valodnieku, gan ekspertu starpā. Un, ja var palīdzēt tulkot kolēģiem, kuri nesaprot latviski, es būšu ļoti pateicīgi, lai visi ir tiešām zinoši un iesaistīti. Un šodien Margus Cahna, mans igauņu kolēģis, esti puisis ir šeit, un mēs esam Cēsīs, kur tikai pirms dažām nedēļām mēs atzīmējām 105. gada dienu kopš mūsu kopīgajām igauņu un latviešu cīņām par brīvību. Un man ir arī ļoti liels prieks, ka mēs to varam darīt LAMPA, kas ir sarunu festivāls, jo kā tad notiek sarunas? Protams, mūsu valodās, un tā varbūt latviešu, igauņu un citas valodas. And today at the UN, this UN panel, it's important actually that we have the President of the General Assembly here, because indeed as countries in the world, and I've never understood why we do especially mention small countries, because actually Latvia is twice as big as the Netherlands in terms of territory, but I don't think the Dutch ever call themselves small. But anyway, everything is relative. And we try to solve global major challenges tonight, but also we have a common concern, and that one of the common concerns is actually smaller languages, and that's where the size actually does matter. And for us with Estonians, it is both national but also a global priority to nurture and develop our languages. And for example, also in the United Nations, the period of 22 to 32 is designated as the UN International Decade of Indigenous Languages. And that is very clearly the aim of drawing the world's attention to the alarming disappearance of small languages and the need to preserve and strengthen them. So, for example, Latvia and Estonia actively cooperate in the preservation of Livonian cultural heritage and language. So tonight we will present the Language Award of the Latvian and Estonian Ministries of Foreign Affairs together with my colleague Margus Tsahna here in Cēsīs. And I would also like to give you the floor, Margus, to say a few sentences in your beautiful language, and then we will do the formal ceremony. Please.
So I hope, thank you, Baiba. Tere õhtust kõigile ja palju õnne teile selle kõige toredama ürituse puhul, mis on väga huvitav ja sisuline. So, was it okay?
Okay.
So, but,
was it something rude?
It was only bad things, you know. Only bad things are coming from Estonia. We are making bad jokes about
that
you.
That we will do later.
Yeah, but really I want to thank you, Baiba, to ask me here. And I really gave everything to come here. And actually, this year
our relationship has been especially close since we took sauna together.
Yes, we went, but not in Estonia and Latvia. We went for that to Finland.
Yes.
Just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes. Absolutely.
But you're right, if I may, a couple of words. Small countries, small languages. And I think that our languages formally could have been already died off. But the truth is that only few people in the world knows that we are, with our language, we are doing science. We have universities. We are not only talking about it. And we are really, really, really not only speaking these languages, but this is the way of how we are thinking. And for me as well, the languages has always been how to say, the national logical systems, which are the oldest ever, because, you know, I didn't understand a word, actually, what you said in Latvian language, except my name and igaunia.
Igaunia.
Yeah, and the other way around. But 105 years ago, we fought here.
Yes,
in
that's
Cēsīs,
what I said.
Or we,
exactly
yes, okay, then we had the same speech.
Yeah.
So we fought here in Võnnu, you know, the place we called it Estonian. This is a historical Estonian city, Võnnu.
Okay, here we go.
And you have no islands as well, actually, but we do. You know, Ruhnu.
Stop it, or I will.
But we fought together against Landeswehr.
Yes.
And we didn't understand the word, but we fought and we were winning. And we are independent now. So we can do things together, Baiba.
Yes, and that was a battle for the freedom. It was a battle for the values. It was a battle for the future generations.
Exactly, for us.
Yes. So going back to the language awards, we had several truly outstanding applications. We had Guntars Godiņš, Karl Pajusalu, Leo de Rozīte, Ragnar Kond, Latvian choir in Estonia, Ziemeļu balsis, or Northern Voices. And I would like to thank all the nominees for their great contributions and selfless work. And tonight, I would like to announce this year's winner, and maybe we can say it together.
Please say it, because...
Professor of History and Dialect of the Estonian at Tartu University, linguist, poet and translator, Karl Pajusalu.
Karl Pajusalu. Juhu!
So we praise Karl Pajusalu for lifelong network building between Estonian and Latvian linguists. He has broken the barrier among the linguists of Estonia and Latvia. I didn't know there was a barrier, but okay. We also praise him for lifelong research of the Livonian language and the Estonian language enclaves in Latvia. Also, we praise him for being a beacon for revitalization of the extinct Salaka Livonian variety in dictionary and grammar, and part of Latvian Estonian literary landscape, the only poet in the world writing in Salaka or Salatsa. Salatsa, that's actually a Latvian name. Livonian. And his pseudonym is, for Latvians, Tempju Kārlis. And let me just read a quote from Karl's work. So, the Latvian territory in the central Baltic region has historically been a core area of the Baltic Sea Sprachbund. So, besides the Baltic languages, several Finnic varieties have been spoken in the region. And Salatsa Livonian has often been seen and spoken as a mixed variety of Estonian and Livonian. However, it has actually been a mixture of at least 3 languages: Estonian, Livonian, and Latvian. Fantastic. I would also like to note that it's not only diploma, but there's also a material award. And I'm not going to say the amount, but it's not small. Despite being small languages. And now, Margus, I will make a joke at you, and you have to make a joke at me, and then we can conclude.
Right now?
Yes.
But
Do you know
jokes?
Do you know that you have better than we do?
No.
Neighbors.
Yeah. But the case is that, we are bad jokers. I wrote something down. But there is like one
Can't you
thing that
memorize
everybody knows. I can memorize, but I need to check it. The case is that how to recognize the Latvian. Every food fit as 6 toes. Really, it's like everybody in Estonia knows. But how we do know that? Because your Latvians are wearing socks together with
black
sandals.
socks and sandals.
Yes, and that's why you're wearing that. So this is a truth.
It's very niche jokes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Those are really niche. I know. And Lithuanian thinks that if they tell us zirga galvas, that we will get very upset. And then when they tell me that, I stand and look at them and think, what is that? But then,
why this,
our favorite joke objects are Estonians.
Where the 6 toes are coming? Please show us our fit.
I don't know. Tell me. You don't know how to count.
We went to sauna and...
It's about added values, I guess.
It's typical Estonian.
Sorry, I will beat you tomorrow because I just, you told me a joke. I must consider and think about that.
All right, Karl, sorry, we interrupted. You have to give a speech now.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Stand here. Yeah. Liels paldies visiem. Suur tänu kõigile. But I was asked to speak English. I think that, yes, this prize is big honor, and it's honor to all Livonian people and to my grandparents also. Earlier, during this great LAMPA festivals, we spoke with colleagues, and somebody said that she has a free native language, and this cultural richness, many languages, it's a normality in the Baltic area, and we have a very long history. Latvians, Estonians, Lithuanians, Livonians, more than 2,000 years at least. And we don't fight with each other or such very small battles about fishes and so on. But still, it's important to remember our roots and our richness. And here in Cēsīs, especially because we know it's historically correct that it was a center of Letts, former Latgalians, Latvians, then Letts lived here together with Leaves and Vens and other people, and we can see today what it means. It means a lot of important things for all Europe and for all the world. If we speak about the European Union, Jakob Uexküll's famous Baltic German family who claimed their Livonian roots have been here, lived historically in the Baltic area, and we can see that all these added values somehow have global dimensions. At first, it's very often said that this sauna, what you have joint experiences, important experiences, our ministers, that sauna is from Finnish, but actually sauna is sauna in Livonian. Palselstate could claim it's a sauna in Finnish. So we have this Livonian ties, not those, but ties in different ways. And what I thought when I had problem with sun, that my favorite word actually in Latvian is passaule, not saldejums as ordinary Estonian thinks, but passaule, rather the passaule, yeah. The most important notion here is the sun, saule, and we all are under the same sun everywhere in the world, and we can see from this Estonian and Livonian maailm also that maa means earth, and ilm, the original meaning is sky. And this is like a vertical dimension. And I think that for politicians, it's very important to keep things strict, clear, to have clear rules. But for scholars, especially in humanities, it's important to have higher perspectives and to try find as much new innovative solutions, alternatives as possible. And in this sense, cultural knowledge and all languages have their own special value, and it's claimed that the languages which have a smaller population have actually more metaphors and more such unique meanings, and therefore I think that especially here in Cēsīs or Cēsīs in Livonian. It's today. It's my great pleasure to have this prize. Liels paldies visiem!
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Karl, no, don't go anywhere. Ära mine ära, me hakkame õlut jooma nüüd.
What we have tonight is also a special drink. There is a special beer, Latvian Estonian beer, and there is a special soft drink that was created only for this language award. It's called naba, which is the same word in Latvian and Estonian, which means navel, because we are connected at navel. Cheers. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today for the discussion and for the award ceremony. Fingers crossed for the Latvian election for the UN Security Council. Congratulations to Professor Karl Pajusalu on his award. And big thanks to all our distinguished guests for sharing their knowledge with us and representing small nations in important international forums. Have a nice evening. Paldies. Aita.
Thank you.